Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started just a couple minutes past 6. Again, thank you guys for coming in and joining us tonight for this important topic. We have 4 community sessions set up. The first 2 are going to be duplicate presentations, so we'll do the same presentation tonight a second time for those that can't make it, just to give a second opportunity. And then in the 3rd and 4th sections, we'll have our district architects in to cover some more of the specifics on the facility plan proper. The focus of tonight's presentation is just to go over several years of information that has built up to where we are right now. Obviously, we're here to discuss our long-range facility plan and the potential for a proposed new high school campus and what that would mean for our community. But there's a lot of information that has, again, been developed over the last couple of years that has really led us up to this point. But it's a very important topic for us, for our community, and what it will mean for the future. So we do appreciate you guys taking time. I will tell you our presentation tonight is pretty heavy. We're going to try to move through relatively quickly. But at any time, if you have questions or would like any clarification, just wave at me, and we can stop and answer those questions. And then at the end, if there are any questions, we can answer those at that time. But just make it as comfortable as you can. Again, understand that there's a lot of information that really tells the storyline on what we're doing here. I think I know everyone in the room. If not, my name is Jared Wheeler. I'm superintendent of schools. I know most of you. I apologize you have to put up with me. But it's jokes aside, my pleasure to be here tonight as superintendent of schools. So really, I kind of coined the phrase building the future. That's what we're looking at here. And I want to talk about what that means from a school district perspective, what our role and responsibility is in trying to shape the course of the future for our community. So we'll start out with kind of a vision of a rendering of a new Knobmaster High School. That's been floating around out in the public for quite some time. And it's just a picture to kind of kick us off and bring a focus on what we're really talking about and what a facility like that would mean for our community. As seen in the agenda tonight, we have a number of discussion topics, about 10 of those. Again, I'm going to try to move very quickly. Just wave at me if you have questions, and I'll try not to put you to sleep too much on this discussion tonight. This is our strategic plan on the page for the district. It was developed about 5 years ago. And if we look at number 5, stakeholder engagement, that's the function of tonight's community forum. And then also goal number 3, facilities and operations. We do have a goal to provide a world-class learning facility for all of our students and prepare them not just for today, but for tomorrow. So I'm going to start out with the current state of performance in Nominal Public Schools. For the last 3 years, our high school has been named Missouri's #1 high school for college and career readiness by U.S. News and World Report. Our students are really doing a fantastic job at our high school level. And as I often remind our teachers, they don't wake up as a freshman or as a senior and decide that they're going to be excellent. That starts as early as preschool or before, and it builds through our elementary grades. So it's certainly a team effort that culminates in excellent performance at our high school level. On the military side, for 3 of the last 5 years, Knobmaster Public Schools have been recognized as a National Partner of Excellence through the General Pete Taylor Award. That's something that we're very proud of, and proud of our ongoing partnership with MSEC. Likewise, Air University has reached out to Knobmaster Schools and really used our partnership with Wyman Air Force Base as an example in some of the work that they're trying to push down in Montgomery, which they have an ongoing challenging situation down there, and then in many places across the Air Force. And they've looked at Knobmaster for the example of the partnership that exists here between our installation leadership, our school district, and our Board of Education. Speaking of our Board of Education, we have 3 members here. We have our President, Larry Bolton, Casey Cunningham, our Vice President, and then Paul Hills, our rookie. Young Lennon Forty did pass his training the other day, so he's a full bona fide certified board member, and we appreciate him coming in and stepping up to serve. And then last on this list, the district was recently highlighted in Forbes magazine and a couple dozen other national outlets for a really, really unique partnership that we have with Wyman Air Force Base. Our kids, believe it or not, fabricated a part that is now operational across the entire B-2 fleet. So if you didn't hear that story, We encourage you to look that up, or I can share that information, but it's a really, really neat example of how we work here at Knobmaster. On its inaugural study, the Air Force conducted on quality of education in 2019. Wyman Air Force Base came out #1 of all 154 installations across the country. That was led in no small part by the job we're doing here in Knobmaster Public Schools with our students. So that's another indicator of kind of the current status and level of performance in Knobmaster schools. As our team says, or as I say, and our team seems to embrace, we're just getting started with some of the great things that we're trying to do for our kids. The next topic tonight is kind of shifting to the Air Force and Department of Defense on their recent focus on quality of education and what that means for mission readiness and quality of life for our service members. Right here we have Heather Wilson, which has been twice removed, but Deborah James, her predecessor, was really the secretary that kind of got the focus started on education and what it means. And they clearly said that the quality of education is one of the top readiness issues for our Department of Defense. Good evening, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
And that initial focus has really grown over the last number of service chiefs and secretaries to the point that in the 2020 NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, they ordered for all branches of service to conduct a similar assessment on quality of education. So it's something that appears to be gaining momentum and not going away, and as such it offers us a fantastic opportunity and a timely opportunity to really use that focus and leverage that into opportunities for our community and our students. I have another artifact here. This was Chief of Staff Dave Goldfein, and he just gives another anecdotal comment that as he visits installations across the country, the #1 quality of life issue is public education. He's meeting there with Joe Driscoll, the former Missouri military advocate for the state, and a good friend of us here in Knobmaster. Last but not least, this is a little bit dated, but General Hyten was appointed to the next Joint Chiefs Vice Chairman. He also is a friend of Knobmaster and continues to focus on education as a top readiness issue. I put this in here too because on this same publication when he was announced, we had a little tidbit over here in that same publication about Missouri High School's robotics team's fixes a B-2 cockpit glitch. Those words were theirs, not mine, but that's pretty much what happened. Number 2 and number 1 are out of the way. Any questions so far? And I am going to try to move fast and quickly, so if you want me to slow down or have any questions, please let me know. Number 3, and I'm going to slow down on this one a little bit because the other 2 are kind of old news over the last 5 years. But one of the new topics that we haven't talked about extensively is the role of the public school district in driving economic development. For our realtor in the room and other realtors that I've talked with, they know that the quality of public education has a significant impact on property values in the region as well as the growth of the community. That should be no surprise to anyone. But in some communities, that is still something that is relatively new. We're going to talk about a little bit of anecdotal information that may be of interest to you on this topic tonight. But a couple of things I want to point out. Aside from Wyman Air Force Base, Knobmaster Public Schools is the largest employer in the community. We employ about 250 full-time employees with about another 50 or so in our substitute and part-time ranks. So without question, our schools are here first and foremost for our kids. But schools are also here for our adults, our employees, and our community as an opportunity for employment and service, not to mention volunteers. So we look over tonight, next door we have a ball game going, we have a couple other events going across the district. The school really serves as the hub of the community, and as such it plays a vital role in for kids for what it means for the full economy. We're going to talk just briefly about what a new high school campus or any kind of growth may look like and what that may mean for growth in the community. And we're going to look at our neighbors down in Waynesville or what occurred down there following construction of their high school. Also, what it would mean for business development. For those that have been in the community for some time, you know that we have lost a grocery store, a pharmacy. We've seen some businesses leave, and we kind of are left scratching our heads. What's really going on there? Is there something we're doing right or wrong? We have to also look at to our east, to our west. We're neighbored by two rather large communities, much larger, that are also the county seats of the community, which typically carry the lion's share of the population of the community. So we're kind of in the middle of that, trying to compete, and we're doing so very well on the academic dashboard, but we feel like our facilities are in an area where we could certainly, frankly, we're underperforming as we compare to our neighbors to the west. So that's something that we've talked about and what that will mean for the future of our community. Increase in assessed valuation over time due to growth. When we talk about our tax rate tonight, if that is something, and I want to be clear that a proposition or a ballot measure to our taxpayers is not something that we're looking at right now in phase one. It is something, though, that we need to discuss and be aware of, make sure that we understand the facts of our paradigm on our tax rate and what that might mean sometime in the future. But an increase in assessed valuation over time would, by default and by law, cause the tax rate to drop. So if it did increase or if it stayed the same, that growth over time would cause a slight drop or perpetual drop in assessed valuation. So that's something that we'll talk about when we get more into the talk about a tax rate. Increase in property values, I mentioned that briefly, but it's no secret that strong schools and strong communities go hand in hand, and where you have both with a $100 million installation in your backyard, we should be able to see an expectation of an increase in property values over time. And then again, increase of community amenities with some of those businesses that were lost. If we can get a larger population, get more dollars circulating locally, we might see additional businesses start to pop up. To that point, back in 2016, due to the strong support from Knobmaster Public Schools and specifically also a couple of community members and board members, we were able to bring the Missouri Main Street Initiative into town. If you guys are not familiar with that, that's a program that's been going on for about the last 5 years that really focuses on revitalization of Main Street downtown. During that time, we've moved from having most of our businesses, or many of our businesses, shuttered and closed, to having businesses that are opening or new startups that are trying to make their way. So there's definitely some sustainable activity and sustainable footholds that have been taking place. Snobs on the Corner is a really unique, quite frankly, a pretty awesome addition to our downtown area, and we have several others that are following suit. So, as mentioned prior, I just wanted to talk briefly about an example of economic growth following a school construction project. We specifically chose Waynesville because their impaction rate of military students is very close to us, about 70%. I think they're a little bit higher. But Military Connected, they did a high school project back in 2003, is when they built their new high school. A great project, similarly funded through a match of local dollars and federal dollars. But you can see in the slide between 2003 and 2008, over that 5-year period, they had almost a 107% increase in assessed valuation of the district. So right after that was accomplished, they saw 3 years with growth of 21%, 13%, and 23%. So they attributed that, and our financial advisors attributed that in part to the establishment of that new school project. If you go down the next almost 18 years, you can see that doubled to a 213% increase in assessed valuation. I don't think that we would see that here in Knobmaster. Warrensburg is a larger community with smaller surrounding communities, but we do certainly have the opportunity, maybe a better opportunity, being a small community bordered by two larger communities with families that want to come to a smaller high-performing school. So we'll vet this out. This is one quick measurement that we wanted to look at and kind of get that as a food for thought. But the bottom line is there's a strong correlation between the public school, the trajectory of the public school, and the trajectory of growth of the community. Next up is kind of getting to where the rubber meets the road, and that is why the need for a new Knobmaster High School campus. And we're going to kind of run through these pretty quickly. Back in 2013, when the district did its last voter ballot measure, we had some community input from stakeholders, and two of the things that they mentioned were the need for a pre-K, preschool program, as well as a performing arts center. Those are two things that stuck out at that time. At that time, we were a district with about 1,450 students. Right now, we're jumped up and almost reaching 1,900 students in enrollment. I will say that that does include our new preschool program. So we've inflated that some by our programming, but we are over time seeing a trajectory of growth. Item number 2 is the 2016 facility assessment. Our district went through an initial assessment of our facilities and looked at what the needs were, what was going well with the capacity issues, and kind of used that to drive some of our decision making over the last 5 years. Number 3, again, growth in student enrollment. We've seen about a 15% growth during this time. And if you talk to any of our teachers, they will tell you that our classrooms are pretty full, and our schools are pretty full. We did prior have some classrooms that were open. We had a little bit of room to breathe. But again, because of some of our programming and our growth, we're seeing our buildings become, frankly, they're approaching reaching capacity. So we do have some need for a new facility based on growth alone. Number 4, we talked about expansion of the preschool program offerings, if funding is available and if space is available. I will say that there is talk in some of the new legislation on universal pre-K and providing funding for that. So that's something that we definitely want to take advantage of if it is offered, and part of the scenario will be, do we have space to expand those programs? Number 5 is support for middle school facilities. You guys are aware you're in Knobmaster Middle School, but if you go outside our middle school, you don't see the same type of athletic and extracurricular facilities that you might see in Sedalia or Warrensburg or some of the other areas. So that's something that we looked at on what a new high school would mean for the possibility of moving Knobmaster Middle School over to Knobmaster High School. Number 6 is support for high school facility needs. Our career education programs are booming. Frankly, again, we're number 1 for 3 years in a row on college and career readiness with a big focus on career offerings. Our robotics, J-ROTC, engineering programs are really seeing a lot of growth with our students, a lot of popularity in those programs. And the great thing about those, specifically our engineering program, is that the data consistently shows that half or more of those kids that participate in those programs will end up going to a professional career in engineering. So that's definitely a great use of time and resources for the school district. Also, when we get into sports, we have some specific needs that the board has really doubled down and taken a closer look at over the last several months. We know our stadium has some significant issues over at Knobmaster High School from a replacement and usability standpoint, but also from a safety standpoint. And that's something that we've really deliberated because to really fix that right, we're really talking about almost a full reconstruction of that stadium. And that's been a big point of consideration for our board and administration on, do we go back and commit ourselves to staying on that footprint, or do we look down the tracks and do something new? And we'll talk a little bit later about looking down the tracks. Gym space for any parents that have middle school students or others. Those 5 a.m. practices are not the most pleasant for some of us. But that's what we're having to do to find gym space right now for our sports programs. Likewise, the 8 to 10 p.m. at night practices for youth sports is something that is a challenge. But as you stack out all of the demands on those gymnasium spaces, it's definitely a clear message that we could use additional space. And then also back to the stadium, we have added soccer, we have an active band, we have cross-country, track, and of course football and youth sports, all of which compete for that space. I can tell you as a youth sports coach this year, I learned firsthand that we would be on top of each other and race up to that football field as soon as it became available on the rare night that we didn't have another event going on up there. So there's definitely a number of athletic needs, and again, I'm going to call it what it is. The athletic events are the heartbeat of the community in many ways. Those are the social events. It's where we get to see our kids perform and grow up in front of our eyes, in front of the community, and it's an important part of what we do. Then Performing Arts Center, as mentioned prior, that's something that's continued to be kicked around, not just for what it would mean for our students in the drama program and debate program, but also what it would mean for a convening space for our community for other events. Youth sports, number 7, I've mentioned, and then number 8, one of the major components of the plan is a community storm shelter and providing a safe space. We don't have to look too many days in our history to know what a tornado can do. That's been something that's been very personal for my wife and me with the Joplin tornado and what that meant for our family. So community storm shelter is something that's very important to us. So now we're going to go into kind of the components of the proposed high school campus. And this is something that, again, has evolved over about the last 5 years. What we're really looking for is something different and innovative for not just our kids, but for our community. And again, really leaning on the opportunity for a school district to do more than just educate kids. The first item up here, item A, is a robust K-12 certificated career pathway program in STEM, robotics, cybersecurity, and aviation. Those are programs that you won't find in many other school districts in the area. You can look at the Warrensburg Career Center, but that still offers some of the traditional career options like the hairdressing, the auto mechanics, some of the biomed options. We're going for a more STEM-heavy focus here. We're doing that strategically to provide our students the opportunity to grow up and prepare and perhaps choose to support the B-21 and F-35 missions, which will be bedding down here in the near future. We're also looking at that specifically because, as you can see across our career programs, we have a number of retired military veterans who are now instructors in our high school, bringing the specialized experiences that they had in their years of service into these programs to educate and inspire our kids. And then the third leg of that is down the road looking for an opportunity for our veterans who are transitioning into the civilian workforce to have an opportunity over time to come in, participate in these programs, and get a certificated pathway in one of these areas, which would again allow them to secure ongoing high-quality employment in this area in support of the mission. Item B is, as I said, transitioning veteran job placement. What we're really talking about here in A, B, and C is a STEM ecosystem. It's something that is not completely unique, but is something that is not occurring in very many other places across the country when you combine not just K-12 programming, but also that adult ed and then time to mission. There is a current and future tremendous opportunity for private partnerships in this pathway that would, again, bring new and unique resources into our community. Item D is a robust advanced placement. Gentlemen, I'm doing good. If I yell for you, please come back. Robust advanced placement and dual credit courses, that's something that our students have seen over the last 5 years, and again, have been very successful. In the first couple of years of our new advanced placement program, our students had the highest number of qualifying scores and the highest number of AP tests across all of Global Strike Command. So it's something that we were very proud of, and those programs will continue to be great for our college-bound students. E is expanded preschool and child care services, which we've talked about. Number 2, multiple all-weather indoor and outdoor joint youth and adult athletic and activities facilities. I talked a lot about what that would mean for our kids. It also means a lot for our installation. Our airmen frequently come over and use our facilities. They use our facilities extensively when their track and field was being reconstructed. And I think we would expect to see more joint use in the future with this proposed facility. Number 3 is the integrated FEMA P361 safe room and storm shelter, which would be available to the entire Knobmaster community and Wyman community. And then lastly was the integrated Wyman Air Force Base History Museum and Performing Arts Center, operated by the Nominal Public School students. And that's something that really originated out of prior work at the base on the focus on a heritage museum. They were trying to find a pathway to do that and funding to do that. We actually had an endorsement about 4 or 5 years ago, but the then current director of the Department of Tourism, and we do believe we could continue to reclaim that endorsement if this came to pass. That would be something that definitely would have to require grant funding to pull that off because it is highly unique. But when we think about what we're trying to accomplish there with a museum tied to a pack, we're pushing down the operations cost over time so that it's sustainable. And then we're finding something that will bring a small group, perhaps distinguished visitors, or something as large as a couple of tour buses that want to come through, go through, do a presentation on Wyman history, come downtown, shop, grab something to eat, and then head out to base to see Oscar I or the B2. So really it was going to try to serve as an anchor to get some tourism brought into the Knobmaster community. Pretty unique, pretty lofty as a component, but it's something that we think has some merit and that can garnish some support and raise the dollars to get that done. Okay. Number 5 is the current state of affairs in Knobmaster. We talked about the state of academic performance. I want to talk just briefly about the state of affairs. Again, we have about 250 staff. We're the largest employer in the community proper. Our number of advanced degrees with our staff has gone up over time, and we have seen our applicant pools really strengthen over time. Several employees in the room are new in the last couple of years, and we're very, very proud of the type of talent that we've been able to recruit into the district. Not that our old dogs aren't awesome either. So Mr. Lane just celebrated 25 years this past Sunday of excellent service to the district, and we really appreciate that. But we are trying to establish a destination of choice for our employees. We've worked on employee compensation and competitiveness over the last several years and have made quite a bit of traction in that area. Number 2 is in-house operations. Our board went through some very challenging times with decisions on what to do about food service and transportation and maintenance. If you look around the region, a lot of schools have outsourced those departments for a variety of reasons. Our board has said we want our employees to be our employees. And what that means is better jobs, better benefits, and better opportunities for our local residents. When you look at how our dynamics break down with our employees, we have far more certified staff, classified staff, non-certified employees that are residents of the community that work here, as opposed to what we see on our certified side. So it's something that's very important, and our board has made a commitment to doing the most that we can to make those jobs desirable. As we look forward, that's going to probably pay off in big ways compared to some of the other districts. On the finance side, over the last 6 years, we've seen our fund balances, overall total fund balances grow from $9.7 million to $22.6 million since 2015. During that time, we've replenished almost our entire bus fleet. We've done 1-to-1, pre-K through 12, we've done some small facilities projects. But part of that fund balance growth has been two-part. Number 1, driving federal impact aid revenues, but also on no action. And that's something that has been seen in different ways. But part of the reason we have those fund balances is because we have paused on taking action in the wrong way. Because there have been a lot of easy decisions that we've considered, but we wanted to make sure that when we spend that dollar or that $100 or $1,000 or $1 million, that we're doing it in a way that not just takes care of today's needs, but also takes care of 40, 50, 60 years down the road. So we've strategically built those balances to be in a position to make some good informed decisions. I talked about student academics. I won't go through that again. We're extremely proud of our little Wyman preschool program opening the doors 2 years ago. On the extracurricular side, we haven't talked about this extensively, but we've added soccer, cross-country, shooting club, robotics, 5 families of robotics all the way down to preschool. The J. Rotzi Raiders and Cyber Patriot, those programs are seen strong in enrollment and participation, which is fantastic. Over the last 5-6 years, we've had nearly $10 million in grant making to bring outside dollars into the community. We're a national spotlight and poster partnership for military family advocacy and partnerships with Wyman Air Force Base funds. We've stabilized our governance. Our board has really had a steady hand over time. We've not seen any chaos in the boardroom, which has, over the last 2 years, been rampant. But our board has had a steady hand at the helm, making sure that we track this course the right way. And then number 9, return on investment. We're going to look later at our local tax rate as that compares to the high level of academic achievement that we continue to see. We do have one of the lowest tax rates in the region. This is how our grants stack up. These are specifically from Department of Defense Education Activity. We started with $400,000, then a $1.25 million, $1 million, and $1 million. Those are the host of programs that those grants have provided. And again, all of those programs are filled with Knobmaster students taking advantage of those. But that, again, represents about $5 million in grant making. And as my esteemed colleague in the back row, Mr. Coron, would say, he's just getting started. I think he's wrapped up a couple grants and ready for a couple more. So he does a great job of making those programs come alive for our kids. I'm going to talk about our capacity for achieving excellence. So it's not just new programs, but it's what it means for kids and their outcomes. We talked about 3 years in a row, top school in the state for college improved readiness. Our partnership with Military Child, Air University, and Forbes. All indicators of what it means when we put opportunities in front of our kids and how they step up to meet those challenges. All right, so now for the reason a few of you probably came, what does this mean for my local taxes? Again, I'm going quickly, but wave at me if you have any questions as we go through. I want to make sure that we're clear on this. This item, for whatever reason, tends to hit a nerve with some folks, no matter what community you're in. But it also is something that can hit a nerve in a good way. We had a community member come in and throw down almost $1,000 of gift cards for our kids today to put those in their stockings for Christmas. And that's one unique way of giving back. But really, when we talk about taxes, it's every one of our taxpayers giving back to our kids and supporting them in their future. So a lot of people take a lot of pride in what that means when you write those checks in December or January. Couple of details here. 70% military student affiliation, so 7 out of 10 of our students are connected to the mission. We're unique in that means we have a lower tax base. We have a large number of parents that we serve who are not residents or voting taxpayers of the community, so that makes us very unique. And with that, we rely heavily on federal impact aid for our school operations, and we're going to talk about that in detail. We talked about the 2013 voter initiative. We're going to go into detail on that. We're going to talk about utilities pipeline and what that meant. Essentially, in 2013, our voters voted to increase our levy from 275 to 350. Little did we know a utilities pipeline would come through the community, forcing that levy to drop back down by state law to about 316. So about half of what the voters approved was lost. And then over about the last 3 or 4 years, that has slowly crept back up to approaching the voter-approved 350 mark. We will talk more detail on that, but that was a really unique development in our community that was very interesting. We're going to talk about our local effort as it compares to the region, and then specifically and clearly articulate that this first phase that the board is considering is not a tax initiative for our community. The overall project most likely would be, but that would be something that would come with time and hopefully be partnered with a much larger federal grant. Okay, so Impact Aid is a program from the 1950s. It has had strong bipartisan support throughout the duration of the program, and it is a lifeline for our community. We are one of about 24 heavily military impacted school districts in the nation, and because of that, we receive a significant amount of federal impact aid to support the students living or associated with Wyman Air Force Base. You can kind of look through the years from the bottom to the top and see that our impact aid is about over time, about three times the amount of revenue for school operations that we receive from local taxes. So while we do have, we appreciate our local taxes and all that our taxpayers do to support our students, we also are very appreciative of what our federal impact aid dollars mean for ongoing school operations. It's a unique program on how it's funded and how it works, and over time we continue to look at opportunities within that program to continue to increase those revenues. But those 1-2 punch, along with other federal dollars that are not impact aid related, and of course our state dollars, are what bring us up to about a $22 million revenue stream each year. Now we're going to kind of look at our local tax rate, and I was talking with Mrs. Smith earlier on kind of how we compare in the region. This is something that goes in front of our board and our community every August during our tax rate hearing. And we take this cohort of school districts, which includes the Missouri River Valley Conference, which is our athletic and activities conference, as well as the schools in the 4 counties surrounding Wyman Air Force Base, and really see where their total tax rate is and where they rank. You can see that if you live next door in Warrensburg, you're going to have a 527 levy, as opposed to living in Knobmaster of 348. So we're about, clearly very close to the bottom, but with that, we're about $1 or so lower than the average of the region, and that's a metric that the board has talked about over the last 5-6 years of how we compare. Now, does that work for us and has it worked for us? Yes, it has. Through our federal impact aid being a supplement. Does it mean that that's something that we always need to keep? Maybe so, maybe not. If we continue to be highly successful with grant making, then we will proudly keep that levy. If there's something that we decide that we want to do, and the voters want to do, and the community wants to do, to move that, then maybe there will be a time and place that happens. But right now, that's not something that we're considering. But it is something that's important because it's probably the number one question that will come out of the talk of a new facility. So all of this information will be made publicly available on our website. If you have any questions or anything about tax rate, feel free to send them my way. I'd be happy to sit down with anyone to talk about that, or send them to this information and really separate fact from fiction on what the board is considering and what our current state of affairs is in terms of local taxes. We've, over the last 5 or 6 years during our tax rate hearing, we've also looked at what it would mean if we did go to our voters for a tax rate increase of about $1, or moving to that average area, and it would produce somewhere around $1 million of additional funding for the district. That would certainly be a big supplement towards a new facility project. So it's something we've talked about, but again, it's not something that is necessary for what the board is considering right now. Any questions on taxes? I want to not race through that. I'm surprised that we don't have any, but if you think of one, let me know. The next topic is the overview of the Defense Communities Infrastructure Program and the infrastructure bill that's coming out of the COVID recovery. DSIP is a program that we were instrumental in helping working with Mrs. Wickham's dad and others to advocate through our various military civilian support agencies to find funding to support our local defense communities. We are able, after hard work, we have it written into legislation in 19, it was funded in 20, and again in 21, and we're set up for, I believe, $50 million of funding in 2022. That is a program that allows us to write a grant to support the construction of a new high school. We did submit back in 19 in the original year. We did come up short on that. For whatever reason, they felt a large swimming pool aquatics project in another state was more important. But we did get a lot of positive feedback on that. We were selected as a finalist and we came up short. Last year we did not reapply because the focus shifted to hard infrastructure instead of infrastructure to support quality of life. So we're carefully watching and staying on top of that bill to do two things. Hopefully shift it back to quality of life issues, and number one, to continue to increase funding. At $50 million, a $25 million ask was quite hefty. We knew it was. We talked with the Pentagon about that. They asked us to go ahead and submit, and we did it, but we didn't come up successful. So that is a program that offers an opportunity, a real opportunity for us, and we'll continue to track that. More recently, the introduction of the infrastructure bill from the Biden administration offers slightly more than $50 million. It's, I think, what, $1 trillion or something along those lines. I don't ever want to stand at a podium and talk politics. So what I will tell you is whatever opportunity or dollar is available from any side of the aisle, it's my job to go after and try to get it for our students. And that's my intentions with that infrastructure bill. There are some things that make sense that would complement this project. We're also working at the state level to see if there's any type of COVID recovery dollars that could continue to be directed to Knobmaster. With our DSIP project, that legislation originated out of the Association of Defense Communities. They were really the champions to get that across the board. It originally landed in the Office of Economic Adjustment. That office has now been replaced with the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation. So that's kind of the agencies that oversee that money, and we continue to work to develop relationships with leadership in that department. And again, the DSIP program is basically designed, as the name suggests, to support infrastructure programs in defense communities. For the project that we did submit, we had a broad level of support, including letters of endorsement from Governor Parsons, Senator Blunt, Senator Hawley, Congresswoman Hartsford, all three of the former bombing commanders in Title IX, and many others. We haven't yet reached out to the current bombing commander, but we have had, and we know he's on board to support this project. But we've had a number of strong endorsements, and I can tell you Senator Blunt and Governor Parsons continue to be acutely aware of what we're trying to do here, so we're really leaning on their support moving forward. These are the letters that went in just as artifact data for this presentation. So now for current progress towards the plan. Sorry. Let's go back up. Again, we talked about no action and what that means for our fund balances and for the opportunities moving forward. We talked about our reserve balances. We're in a good place to commit cash on hand to support whatever project may be decided by the board. Acquisition of a new site, the board is close to finalizing purchase of a new property. In a small community, it's no secret on that. There are some details that are not publicly available yet, but we are going to talk in general terms about what we're doing for a new site for this project. We're going to talk about a recent announcement on a SEMA grant in the amount of $4.5 million, and then kick back to that grant and go need it for the opening of our preschool. So this slide shows the 6 primary components of the proposal that has, again, developed over the last 5 or 6 years. Of course, the new Nominal High School Innovation Campus and Transitioning Veteran Learning Center is the keystone of this project. It comes with multiple all-weather indoor and outdoor adult and youth joint use athletic and activities facilities. The STEM ecosystem that we talked about, the integrated storm shelter here at number 4, the Wyman Air Force Space History Museum and Performing Arts at number 5, and then enhancement of the Early Childhood Learning Center. So what is our progress towards this plan to date? In 2020, we received a $1 million DODEA grant to open a Little Lincoln preschool. It's opened with 3 sections. This year, we were able to add a 4th section because we had space. We are now at capacity, so we will not be able to expand that program without new space. As always, we thank DODEA for their ongoing support. More recently, we have a memo here from the State Emergency Management Association. notifying the district that we've been invited to apply or submit an application for a $4.5 million SEMA grant that would provide the community storm shelter for our school district, for the Knobmaster community and Wyman community. That process, in short, you provide a notice of intent. If they accept and invite you to apply, that means that they have set funds aside to fund that. So over the next 8 to 10 months, we will complete that grant process and look for awarding of that $4.5 million with a potential groundbreaking next fall. So we're really excited about that, and that is, again, one of the components in the plan that we can hopefully check off the box. The site orientation, as the community, hopefully everyone is aware, up to the north side of this yellow box is the Knobmaster Sports Complex. Back in, I think, 2008, 8 or 9, the prior board and administration and community committed to the development of a four fields, 2 softball, 2 baseball complex on the north side of 50, providing the district kind of a presence and footprint up on the north side. With the recent board direction, we are negotiating purchase of 50 additional acres that are contiguous to that property that would serve as the future building site for a potential new high school. That is kind of the layout and footprint of what that will do to connect. Right there in the middle is a carve out of the MoDOT property. That is an ongoing topic of discussion with the board at this time. But it gives us a really nice presence along one state maintained and one, I believe, county maintained paved road with some good accessibility on Highway 50. So we have the site, we have the dollars coming in for the storm shelter, we have the preschool that is operational. That leaves the high school campus and the number 2, which is the indoor and outdoor joint use facilities. The phase 1 of our project that we're looking right now, the board is considering, will be discussed in community forums 3 and 4 of what that will mean for those components and how they build into this overall plan. So you can see that some progress has taken place. We're not there yet. The big piece that remains moving forward is whether or not we can be successful in receiving a $20 to $30 million federal grant. With our track record here with grant making, we feel pretty confident that we can, but we also recognize that's a pretty big ask. So that's what we're after right now. That grant would apply to a phase 2 of construction to build out the remainder of that project. Right now, what the board is considering is a little bit heavier on the athletic side, but right now, again, part of the focus on the athletics is it really hinges on spending our money to meet immediate needs, spending it in the right place, while also duplicating some facilities to meet some of those constraints and time issues that we talked about with our kids. To wrap up, these are a list of hyperlinks if you want to access this and go through it. We've got some really, really neat storyline videos and articles here that kind of tell the story that I just tried to capture here in about an hour. But the bottom line is this is a really, really unique school district with unique opportunities, awesome families, awesome kids, awesome employees, and we're really trying to do something very different. Our last high school was constructed in the mid-1960s, and there have been some small renovations over the last 60 years, but there has not been a new campus that has been constructed. Meanwhile, in Sedalia, in Warrensburg, and several other districts around our community, we've seen those new high schools pop up. We've seen, frankly, some community growth in small towns. And that is a very, very quick rundown of the comments that I have prepared for tonight. Again, this will be available on the website for viewing, along with the future community forum presentations. We would really encourage, we had a really good turnout tonight for a relatively short notice. We are sending a mailer out to our entire community, and of course, Mrs. Brand continues to post on a number of outlets on our social media and other places. We really want to get as many people in front of these conversations as we can. And we want to fill those the questions and comments. The last thing that we would want to do is go forward without having an opportunity for everyone to share their opinion. That's what we should do. So with that, I would open it up for any questions or comments or feedback.
My only concern is the impact date. It just seems like every so many years, politics gets involved and they're trying to move that money so that it gets more into the St. Louis area and something like that, which we kind of have no control over. I mean, it's a voting type of a thing, but it is a scary thing that we may not have that money. We have been fortunate over the years to have that, to use that for the school district. And, you know, that's my concern is because of the military.
So, and that's I share your concern every day. What I will tell you is, and I kind of stated this quickly, but the federal impact aid program originated back in the 1950s, and it has received strong bipartisan support on both sides of the aisle. We do a lot of education and advocacy work out in DC. We make at least 2 trips to Capitol Hill every year. Well, our district and Waynesville and others like us go and make sure that our congressional delegation is very, very aware, specifically aware with facts on what this program means for us. We've seen funding increase because of that advocacy. We've remained strong. We've maintained strong support and seen that funding increase over time. Representative Hartzler, Senator Blunt, Senator Hawley, we meet with Greg Whitmire, Bill Long, a lot of the folks that are really looking to make some news right now. They have all continued to pledge support for that. So the Missouri congressional delegation is supportive of that. But like you said, nothing is exempt from being under attack. A couple of years ago, as I shared with the board, the voucher program, the school choice, was looking for a pool of money. They went after impact aid and found out that was a door that was very tightly shut. And that was in part because of the ongoing advocacy. So from a state level, that impact aid would not, I don't see any pathway where that would be redirected to either of the metropolitan areas. What we have seen is like the brown back tax credits being directed to those metropolitan areas. We know that we have the geospace campus that's going in up there, but that is not linked to the impact aid program. So I think the bigger risk, and I actually had that, I think, as one of my bullet points, is open enrollment in the state. You know that Representative Bradley Pollack next to Sedalia pushed a bill through, or tried to push a bill through last year for open enrollment, and that did receive quite a bit of traction, but ultimately it did not fail. I can tell you, we have a good relationship with Representative Pollack, and he's going to bird dog that bill until it gets through. And we've talked about this at length with our board. We think it's something that's coming. When we really started looking at our future, we saw that as a tremendous risk. That I heard stories prior to my time that wing commanders had pushed for open enrollment so that their kids could go to Warrensburg schools. Took that all the way to Jefferson City to try to make that happen, and luckily it didn't. So that was something coming in that I was very worried about, because there are things, frankly, in Sedalia and Warrensburg that their communities offer that Knobmaster doesn't. So we really said, what's the one thing that we can do here that's within our power, and that is make our schools the best performing school district in the region, and we've accomplished that. So we kind of flipped that script, and now we have daily in our office, we have parents that are calling and asking, we want our kids in Knobmaster schools, what are the pathways to get that done? And I think we've seen that enrollment growth. So as we talk about open enrollment, we flipped it from a flight risk, of what we felt was a flight risk 6-7 years ago, to an opportunity that if we have the facilities, we may be on the receiving end of that. Because frankly, that's what we've seen for the last 2 years. I think there are a lot of other risks with open enrollment, but from a sustainability standpoint from our our school district. That's definitely, I think, closely aligned to what you were saying. It's a risk that we've talked about at youth, and we feel like this plan, a great facility partner with a great academic program, would be a winning combination for sustainability. You didn't ask, but I'll share anyway. Along the funding lines, we talk about growth that might follow a new facility. Right now things are booming, but we've seen that in our history before, and we know what might follow. So we're seeing very, very strong, historically strong revenues right now, but we know that will come to an end. And I was a new superintendent when the sequestration went through back in 2013, when our community really considered their tax rate, and was able to navigate through that. And what I found, kind of in reflection, are things are never quite as good or as bad as they seem. So we try to have a steady hand and keep an eye on that. But if we were able to accomplish a new project and see that community growth and assess valuation, that would provide some shelter. If we did see an economic downturn, we would have larger tax base to draw from and continue to see those revenues. So I don't think that our project will be stood up in time to see the recession hit. What I think would be more likely is that if we tee this up and have the timing right, we may need that building during the recession, which would really allow us to stretch our dollars. So that would be the ideal approach, and that stretching that dollar would offset the corresponding decrease in revenues.
So when you're talking about growth, there really isn't much housing available around here, and there really isn't much place for people to build for housing around here. So are you looking at growth from open enrollment being part of that?
I think yes and no. We haven't. I think it will happen, but really the growth is more focused on residential development. And for the right price, I think some properties would become available. Part of going north of 50 would be to be closer to some of the vacant available farmland that could potentially be converted into residential development. But at Cahill subdivision, right there on the 13 bypass, seems to be a big destination for a lot of the families that like the Air Force Base. I think if that thing was sitting off of Highway 23, that we would see the same type of demand for that housing and others. So part of, on one of my slides, I talked about the next steps of what the district will do to begin encouraging those conversations. Some of those have already occurred, but others would occur to encourage developers to take a closer look at Knobmaster and the opportunity that exists here. So primarily, we look at residential development. We know our city infrastructure, despite some of what came out of the Main Street initiative, we really don't have the infrastructure to support a large manufacturing growth. My assessment is that our community is a niche for us, and then they can come up with a creative niche for Main Street. But I think the district's largest impact would be in creating the type of environment that would draw those developers to come in and do residential development. I think we're close, but this project I think would get us across that finish line to improve that. And I agree, there are some farmers that don't want to let go of their land, but I think there may also be some farmers that would.
So you're thinking that the middle school, if this was to go through and we have a new high school, middle school goes where the high school is?
Yes, and that we'll talk a little more about that in forums 3 and 4. But essentially, we would roll into a new high school, and then this building would probably be either go back to a junior high model, depending on growth when that comes online, or it would be a 6, 7, 8 like we have here, and we roll into an upper elementary, probably a 3, 4, 5, and then we would be able to build out our preschools fully at both Wyman and Knobmaster Elementary. We know Knob Elementary Elementary was the only building that really didn't get a facelift in that last round of construction updates in 13. That's another area where we held off on doing a facelift and some renovations in that school, waiting, because if it becomes a lower elementary school, those needs would be somewhat different in a lot of ways than a full elementary school. But it would roll up and offer that opportunity for growth. When we look at the legislation that provides preschool for all, or at least universal free preschool, that's going to be funded through Andy. And we think there will be some opportunities in the next 3 to 5 years to do that. Great questions. A+. I'm going to go back to this about this incredible. I think that's kind of where we are. On the flyer, we do have the future dates after the holidays for future forums. We would definitely ask you as a carry-out to please share information, help us share information with our community. If we can get additional people here, and especially those that may not be fans. Probably, I would ask you if you know anyone that is not a fan or not supportive of this, please send them my way. And I would love to sit down with them and listen. I've talked a lot tonight, but I also have 2 years and they usually work well, as long as you don't ask my wife. But jokes aside, I would love to hear from them and just hear what the concerns, what the reservations are. I can tell you my biggest reservation when standing in front of you today is this is something that hasn't happened in Knobmaster in 56 years. It is very, very different, and there's a lot of risk associated with the difference. I know our board feels that risk and feels that difference, and they're really wanting to make sure that our community speaks up and provides us the information we need to make decisions.
Just out of curiosity, you mentioned with the open enrollment that there were some downsides to that as well. I know that's I guess some of the money was coming from is from kids coming in from other places. What are those downsides in your opinion?
So, I'll let my young looks fool you in my hairline, but I've been at this school administration gig in Missouri almost 20 years, and did my undergrad graduate in Louisiana, and did taught at the university school. What I can tell you, in the school I began in, it was a 25,000 student district. In Louisiana, they run parish school systems, so you would have 6, 7 high schools. For those of you guys who have been in Barksdale, you know that this situation is different. But there's some efficiencies in larger quantity of scale. One superintendent, as opposed to for 25,000 students, that would encompass, you could almost encompass a quarter of the communities in the state and not have that many kids. In Missouri, we have about 540 school districts. And with that, there's a lot of overhead. There's a lot of superintendents, a lot of principals, a lot of facility heads, a lot of jobs that are created through that structure. We have about 150 schools, I believe, that have 300 students or less. My first district that I worked in had 220 kids, kindergarten through 12th grade. I can tell you, providing opportunities in a school district of that size, a variety of opportunities and career pathways, is extremely difficult, if not impossible. So, in Missouri, there is ongoing quiet consideration of a C word that's I've been told they don't use in Junction City, called consolidation. Let's combine small school districts and allow for those efficiencies to flow through to dollars in the classroom, dollars in the teachers' pockets, and get some quantity of scale that makes sense. But that's a great one-way path to not getting reelected as a public official. So there have been a variety of other alternative methods that have been taken to try to lead towards potential consolidation. This is my opinion on that. But one of those ways would be open enrollment, and that would create a survival of the fittest type of situation. And with that, one of the things that I'm very worried about is how parents would make decisions on where to send their kids. A lot of the small schools stay open because parents want their child to wear the same color jersey, the same number, and play the same position on the basketball court or the football field or the baseball diamond that they play. And when you talk about open enrollment, I do anticipate that there would be powerhouse school districts that would be created based on the affinity for a certain sport or sports, and that would drive some decisions. So consolidation by chaos is not something that I think is going to be good for kids or communities, but open enrollment, I think, has a chance of creating some consolidation by chaos over time. I don't really say that very publicly, but that's how I feel about it. And I think anyone that's really honest with himself will see that risk as well. So how do we handle that? We can't really control the legislation. We can try to influence that. But what we can do is try to create an environment here that makes sense for kids, makes sense for adults, makes sense for residents and business owners, and try to shield ourselves against whatever might open enrollment. Our sports are doing, we've expanded a lot in the area of extracurriculars. We've had success in a lot of areas. We've had some programs that have really struggled for a lot of years. We're trying to work on those. But I'll tell you, coaching is a tough job. It's a tough job, and recruiting great leadership for especially the high-profile large children is the challenge, and something our board is talking about right now. That's kind of my soapbox on open enrollment. I think Representative Pollock has good intentions with what he's trying to do. And I think Senator Hoskins, I don't know where Senator Hoskins is on that bill, but I would think being a resident in Warrensburg, I think the feeling is that those larger county seat communities would be the recipients of those students. I feel a little bit differently based on my experience here.
Thank you.
Other than that risk, kids need great opportunities. We need to quit asking how are you smart, or how smart are you. We need to start asking how are you smart, and align aptitudes and interests to the programs. And that's really, really hard to accomplish in small schools. So we have about 5 minutes left. All right, so I'll stick around afterwards. I, again, want to say thank you to each and every one of you for taking time. We're at about 90 minutes tonight, and it was very fast-paced, so if you guys have any questions or follow-up, please let me know. There's a lot of information to digest. I'm happy to give you coffee or lunch or whatever you guys would like to do if you'd like to talk further. And again, we would ask you if you know of someone that might be interested in this conversation, please send them forward, and we'd love to have a chance to meet with them. Over the next 3 months, we will be sending out through various media a 12-part communication series that will cover in more detail all of the topics discussed tonight. So look for those. Please help us disseminate those. And again, if there are any questions or follow-up, please send them away. I want to take this opportunity to also thank the Board of Education, our teachers, our students, our families. While everybody else has been really in chaos the last couple of years, we've come to a steady course, steady hand, and our community, I don't remember the guy's name, an American novelist, that said that adversity doesn't adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it. And I think the character of the Knobmaster community has been revealed throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, and I can't thank our parents and our employees enough for helping us get through this time. not out of it yet, but we can see why it didn't come. Again, thank you guys, everyone, and for those online, thanks for joining us, and drop in anytime.